Greetings, gentlemen. I don't usually make these sorts of videos, but every now and then I'll see a comment which is then somehow related to a bunch of messages I've received via PM that I think should be addressed, and it's an important issue. It's kind of a back to the basics issue, if you will. So on the price of the lie video, a gentleman by the name of Tassos Obscure, I don't know if I'm pronouncing that right, wrote, "A splendid video, man. I also had a very disheartening point of weakness lately. I've refused women for quite a while, and my tactic is to avoid social interactions with them as much as possible. One of them decided to approach me and did everything typical women do to lure men, and to my surprise, I did react to her lure thoughtlessly. I seduced her, although I didn't like her much. After this whole incident, I suddenly came to my senses and realized that I had no control over myself for that time frame and regretted it instantly. I assume it was a primordial instinctive drive, for it completely overrun any control I had over myself. It has been bothering me ever since." Okay. This is not the first time I've received PMs along these lines. I've actually received a bunch of sort of relapsing, which is, hence the title. I don't think this is really a relapse. For one thing, let's be clear. People misunderstand me all the time. I'm used to it by now. It's still frustrating. Though I myself live a somewhat monastic life, it is not prescriptive. My lifestyle is not prescriptive for other men. I do not expect, nor do I prescribe to men that they be monks or that they forego sex or what have you. For myself, there are a lot of practical reasons why I do that. The most practical reason, I think I might have mentioned this, is due to my circumcision performed at me at birth in the hospital, without my consent, of course, I am incredibly insensitive. That is to say, I've never ejaculated with a condom on, and every time I've had sex with a condom, it was just an act of will to maintain an erection, and I felt absolutely nothing. It was just going through the motions. So it was, in the most literal sense of the word, just a bother. It's just work. There's no pleasure involved, so why would I bother with that? There are, of course, other reasons beyond the fact that I derive no pleasure from it. And in this context, let me cite the words of the immortal Father Vention, who had an excellent saw on this topic that shall echo throughout the ages for all men to hear. What did he say? He said, "Sex without a condom is crazy, and sex with a condom is pointless." And so there you have it. Why would I have feelingless sex with a condom on, and why would I be crazy and have sex without a condom? Either makes sense. But sure, I mean, there's that, and then there's, of course, the effort involved in working yourself up to that. But let's not be confused here. This is my path, is not prescriptive for other men, and you can do whatever you want. Just because you had sex with a woman is not a big deal. And let's remember, my favorite content producer, MGTOW content producer, is Barbarossa, and he is a high lord of vaginal sundering. He sunders legions of vaginal orifices. So there you go. But in your context, Tassos Obscure, you seem to express regret. Now, I think, as I mentioned in a previous video, it's good to identify why you don't want to have social interactions with women. For me, it's pretty clear. Not only is sex pointless with them, I derive almost no intellectual benefit through my association with them. That's what I want. When I talk to people, generally speaking, I want to be informed. I want to be enriched. I don't get that from women. And it's not saying it's impossible, but it's very unlikely. So what are the reasons that you are going through this period of regret? I don't know. You don't have to. I mean, this is fine, what you did. And lots of men go in their own way of sex all the time. But if you want to make it a point not to engage with women, particularly sexually, then I think you have to identify the reasons. Now, that said, of course, there are practical reasons for not doing that. I mean, for example, not every sexually transmitted disease is transmitted via penetration. Oral herpes. Who wants that? There are a lot of reasons to just forego the whole ritual, and that have nothing to do with not being able to get laid or what have you, just because it's dangerous. But it is important to identify what's motivating you. Why do you regret it? Why are you going through this? Now, of course, your instinctive drives, it all comes from the primordial mists. That's true of all of us. Although, you can get to the point where that's just so distant that it doesn't really affect you. You might not be at that point if that's even a point you want to arrive at. But I don't think you should let this bother you unless there's a reason. If you want to have sex, then go have sex. You just need to be aware of the risks. Even wearing a condom, even involving yourself with an escort or a prostitute, all of these are potentially, at least, potentially risky actions and potentially dangerous in terms of sexually transmitted diseases and what have you. So, I mean, there is that aspect, but you can diminish and mitigate some of the risks. And yeah, once again, MGTOW is not in its essence about going monk. I do tend to live that kind of lifestyle because it suits me, but it might not be that way forever. That's not to say I think it's very unlikely I'll ever bother with sex again, but there might come a point in time in my life that that requires me to interact with women on a regular basis. I mean, let's say I were to one day, even though I don't want to, get back into the teaching profession. Well, that's a profession that has a majority of women. Of course, I would have to deal with female colleagues and what have you, female students. And so, yeah, I mean, I would have to deal with these people. Right now, I'm fortunate to be in a position where I don't have to, but that could change. Likewise, previous industry I worked in, translation, same thing. Majority of women, probably something like 60% women. So even if you're not having sexual relations with them, you still have to deal with them. But I wouldn't worry about this. And I've seen lots of PMs along these lines. So what? Unless you have some on principle, you just don't want to bother engaging with women, having sex with them, I think it's perfectly fine. But we should be aware that deep down, all of us still have these primordial drives, and it's almost impossible to completely rid yourself of them. Now, it's an open-ended question as to whether or not that's a desirable end. I personally would love to rid myself completely of these primordial instincts. I find them bothersome and burdensome, and they do very little to enhance my life. But for other people, it might not be the case. So that's an open-ended question. But MGTOW, definitely, there's nothing about going your own way that precludes you from having the occasional dalliance. Of course, there are exceptions. Think about, for example, Mr. Tassos Obscure. If all of a sudden you wrote a PM to me, that I'm not saying you would do this, and you say, well, I found true love, and you start going on about pair bonding and equal partnership and how great this one true love is and the committed relationship and blah, 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 I probably would try to talk some sense into you. I might fail, but I think at that point in time, you're not going your way anymore. If you fall for the trap of the true love business, or you found the one, please wear your glasses, your spectacles of circumspection, because the likelihood that that's the case is, well, it's probably not the case. But apart from that, having the occasional dalliance, being sexually involved with women, there's nothing about that is damaging. In fact, John the Other made an interesting video. I didn't think watch my most recent one, talking about fuck buddies. Yeah, if you can control your emotional attachment, that's a good thing. But yeah, so don't worry about this, Tassos Obscure. Some of as I said, Barbarossa is a high lord of vaginal rendering, and he is, I think, the top MGTOW content producer out there. So there's nothing to do with going your own way. But for whatever reason, if you just don't want to bother with women, then yeah, examine your own behavior. And I think in this case, you just had a minor relapse. This is not the same thing, mind you, as one blowjob away. And I think a critical difference here is that you recognized the error that you committed. You saw it as a sort of regression to some sort of primordial instinct, and you want to correct that. So I wouldn't worry about this. This is quite different from someone who, once again, declares his eternal love and found the one true one and blah, blah, blah. That's something very, very different. And I think you're perfectly fine. And don't beat yourself up over it, because by the looks of it, or by the sounds of it, or rather by me reading your writing, that's the feeling I had. And every now and then, videos like this can be pretty helpful. Reinforce the basic principles. Awareness of the primitive drives, and the fact that you can master them and control them ultimately. Anyway, thanks for watching, and I will see you guys soon. More videos to come. I'm the God's Willing planning a whole bunch this month on covering a range of topics from neurology of politics to, well, a bunch of other things, epistemology and what have you. Everyone take care. Bye-bye.